Endorsed by God by Ronald A. Lindsay. From Free Inquiry's online column, Unprayerful Reflections at secularhumanism.org. That winter, most of the pulpits of Paris rang with eloquence, which skirted close to treason. Fanatical friars and demagogic priests vied with one another in calumny, innuendo, and the spreading of horrendous rumors. The above is a very short excerpt from Garrett Mattingly's classic, The Armada, highly recommended for anyone interested in European history. This excerpt and other passages in this book indicate how, in the late 16th century, the ultra-Catholic party in France, headed by Henry, Duke of Guise, made use of the churches to rouse the population and advance their cause. This, of course, is not a unique episode in the history of exploitation of religion in service of a political cause. Priest, minister, imam, and rabbi have all used their positions over the centuries to condemn the ungodly, aka those with positions they oppose, while stirring their captive audiences into action in accordance with God's will. Now, in a country already riven by deep partisan and ideological divisions, free rein has just been granted to pulpit propagandists to push their political views. Donald Trump's IRS has just announced a policy change. Clergy and other religious officials can endorse candidates in communications to their congregants. The agency rationalizes this policy change by saying that messages to congregants are just like a family discussion. Of course, most families do not have thousands of members or communicate via sermons posted on the internet, or are subsidized by our tax dollars. Here's the thing: religious bodies are treated under the tax code as nonprofit organizations. In exchange for this favorable tax status, nonprofits accept one narrow restriction on their free speech rights. Namely, they must refrain from endorsing political candidates. Otherwise, taxpayers would be indirectly subsidizing candidates they oppose. In addition to keeping churches from abusing their nonprofit status, there is another reason it is advisable to keep religious organizations out of politics. Christopher Hitchens famously said that religion poisons everything. That may be a slight exaggeration, but religion definitely has a history of injecting venom into politics. Nothing beats religious zealotry with respect to inciting hatred. After all, if your opponents are condemned by God, they must be pure evil. But speaking of God, perhaps one silver lining from this ill-advised policy change from the IRS is that maybe, just maybe, a few more people will realize the absurdity of religious belief. Contrasting and competing endorsements will ring out from different pulpits, so that God will appear to be contradicting himself. Perhaps then some will realize that when Preacher Dan says, "God wants this," all he is really saying is that Preacher Dan wants this, and adding an exclamation point. Thank you for listening to this audio edition of Free Inquiry, the journal for secular humanist ideas. If you enjoyed this article, consider subscribing to Free Inquiry magazine to explore more thought-provoking content on reason, ethics, science, and free thought. You can find more articles, subscribe, or support our work at secularhumanism.org. There you'll also discover resources on secular humanism, information on upcoming events, and ways to connect with a community of like-minded thinkers. If you believe in the importance of reason, free expression, and humanist values, consider making a donation to support our work. Every contribution helps us continue to publish, advocate, and provide resources for a more rational, secular world. Once again, thanks for listening and for supporting free inquiry, free minds, and free expression.